If you've got a thirst for knowledge and a love for craft beer, then tune in to our podcast and let us bend your ear. From UFOs to rock and roll, you'll be ROTFL, you're AO. Saying, are you shitting me?
Welcome to another edition of Are You Shitting Me? My name is Aaron, and with me, as always, are my two co-hosts, Brett and Chuck. How you guys doing?
Good. How about you?
Good. Can't complain. Life is good.
We don't want to hear it anyway, so don't complain.
That's right. Just been working 8 days a week and staying busy where I'm at here. We don't even have our beer open to take a drink.
We didn't tell everybody what we're talking about yet.
No, what are we talking about today, Chuck?
We're doing the Beatles today. One of
We
the
are
best
doing
rock
the
bands.
Beatles today.
Yeah, the best bands of all time.
Oh,
I love the Beatles. They're not Billy Joel. I see Brett's hesitation.
Not even a minute in.
Let's get it out here. Come on. What,
Yeah.
before we do, let's drink our beer. We can't dive into discussion without having some of our beers.
I have so many things I want to say, but all right.
Strawberry fields forever. Brett, you want to tell us what we're drinking today?
Man, do I? We are drinking Strawberry Fields by Crooked Stave Microbrewery out of Denver, Colorado. This is a blonde ale brewed with strawberries. Comes in at a big whopping 5% ABV. And on Untapped, they have a 3.6 rating out of only 901 rating. Not that many. But Chuck, what are your first impressions of this?
What?
You know, I liked it. It's a pretty good blonde ale, straight out of Denver. Just enough ABV. That's the topic that we're talking about today. Good stuff.
All right. So
Just enough ABV.
Yeah.
It's just enough.
So
funny.
the aroma, I think, is fantastic. To me,
Yeah, it smells
kind of
really good.
Strawberries are coming through really well. The blonde is coming through. So
She always does.
I think that's a solid beer. You big into fruity stuff, Aaron?
I don't usually do fruity beers, but I do like this. This is good. It's subtle because the smell, it's a very strong strawberry smell, but when you first taste it, it's not like it hits you as much as the smell hits you. It's more of a slow kind of burn. I feel the strawberry flavor on it. It's nice and clear too. I was expecting it to be red, but I guess not. The can's red, so maybe that's what I was assuming.
Yeah, I didn't do enough research to find out how they make it. I don't know if they use a puree or just a strawberry flavoring. I would assume if there was a puree that it would be at least pink.
Red.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
This one's nice. I like it. It's good. It's clear. It's tasty.
I was expecting more strawberries, but I am pleasantly surprised and pleased with the amount that is in there.
It feels like it'd be really refreshing. We go back to it all the time, but a good lawn mowing beer, I think. Hot summer day. I could put a couple either way.
Absolutely. And at only 5%.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Good stuff. Just enough. Just the right amount.
I appreciate everything you've brought to this conversation, Chuck.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Strawberry fields forever.
So let's jump right in. Did you know that beetles make up 40% of all known insects?
I did not. I bet
There's
ants
over-
are probably way up there too.
I'm not sure. Over 400 species of beetles. Who knew?
I had a pet beetle growing up.
Was his name Ringo?
I lived in the Philippines and they had those giant rhinoceros beetles. Like you can get them all the time. And they were big.
yeah.
They were a good 2 or 3 inches size beetles. You could catch them and have them. We kept one in a terrarium for a little while and then released it again.
Then you used it as bait. when
That's
fishing. Awesome. So did you guys grow up with the Beatles?
Yeah, I did. And my mother used to listen to them.
Nice. And what about you, Aaron? You at least were a huge Beatles fan.
I was in college. I grew up with it for sure. My mom loves having the radio all the time. The music was always on in our house, whether or not we were listening to it, even if we were home or not. We'd go away and she'd turn the radio on, so it sounds like people are home. So there was always music on, and it was always the oldie station. So obviously it was Beatles plus everything else from the oldie station. Most of my experience though was earlier Beatles stuff, like pre Sergeant Pepper's, until we got a CD player. I remember my parents had Sergeant Pepper's. I listened to that and pay attention to that, but I didn't really get into a lot of the later stuff like Let It Be and Abbey Road. I didn't get into those until college, probably. How about you?
Yeah, it was definitely my mom. I think she was an earlier Beatles fan. She liked all the early stuff, at least from my perspective, looking back now. She was anti-drugs, anti-hippie type of, it sounds bad, but you know what I'm saying? So we can't listen to these songs because they're referencing drugs, whether they were or not. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, that's a drug reference, so we can't listen to that song.
It's funny, my dad was always into like heavier rock. Like he had Led Zeppelin and he had Hendrix stuff. Anytime Voodoo Child came on the radio, he would just crank it up. But because my mom didn't like that stuff as much, I wasn't exposed to it. It wasn't until later when I did start listening to the later stuff that I kind of realized he was really into that more. My mom had a lot more influence on that earlier, kind of what I was listening to there.
Yeah, my mom it was definitely like, well, doo-wop bands and things like that. That's what she liked. And I don't remember my dad listening to music ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the same with my father. He didn't really listen to a whole lot of music either. It was more my mother. I think the Beatles for me were one of those bands where you're growing up and obviously they're on the radio all the time and you just took them for granted. You didn't really understand that. This is the one thing that I found actually taking the time and understanding more of the history of them, like how they started, where they went. They were really together for 10 years and they put out 13 albums. So, I mean,
that's the craziness of it
that's
all.
some of the best songwriting of all time. It's insane. I didn't really end up getting into them until my late 20s. I was already into some of the other British bands from the British invasion, big Zeppelin fan, and I really didn't get into the Beatles until after going through the whole catalog of Zeppelin. So
Yeah,
I did it in a reverse order, but super impressive history from them.
it's such a wild thing to look at their catalog and go, wow, that they did release stuff in that 10-year period. Like their entire Beatles catalog is this 10 years period. Most bands today, it's 5 or 6 years between albums and it's 4 or 5 songs each. It's crazy.
Yep.
How much they put out.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
I thought you were going to say
I was going to say something. I guess I am amazed at the catalog. I don't know if you guys did any searches for their top songs, like on Spotify. Their streams, they've had 21 billion streams of their songs to date. That's just insane. But then you look at their catalog of songs, there's like 300, 400 songs available on Spotify. They got Love Me Do Original, Love Me Do Remastered, Love Me Do 2010. There's like 9 versions of every song. It's awesome for them, or whoever owns the Beatles songs. It was Michael Jackson.
Oh, wow. I was just thinking, who does own their catalog now?
Good question. I don't know. The new song that just came out a year ago or whatever, who owns that? Is that Paul McCartney? I don't know. Was that part of the deal? I don't know.
I would imagine he probably would, because at this point, if whoever had purchased the catalog at the time would have purchased the catalog at the time, it wouldn't be like, unless there's some kind of clause in there, like plus future releases of whatever else. So maybe there is. I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering, because that song was originally recorded in the 60s. And so did they get that too? I don't know.
But that was a John Lennon song that he was working on, and Yoko gave them the raw tapes and said, this is a John Lennon song, but I think we can make it a Beatles song. And that's what they did with it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really part of the Beatles catalog to begin with. It would have been post Beatles when that was written.
Yeah. By the way, it's 887 tracks on Spotify that they have.
Wow.
Right. But again, like they have 4 or 5 versions of every song. Yeah. Like 8. They do, and I don't know if this is an average or not, but
only 885 of them are hits, by the way. So
some of them nobody's heard of.
Right.
But they do 8 million listens or whatever on Spotify daily. That's insane.
I mean, you know what? They're raking in $15 a day. It's awesome. The live.
Yeah,
That's what I was going to say. That's 0.15%.
I was going to ask, what do you think the generation of revenue is from that?
I bet they're probably bringing in several $1,000s a day on it. This is by no way a comparison, but like my band, we put something out in 2017. We had 10 songs and we have 10 followers. Since then, over 5 years, we made about $175 in royalties from a total of about 1,000 streams.
Who gets what of those royalties?
Oh, we don't even make enough to split it up yet. It goes right back into the band, and that goes right to social media marketing.
You guys aren't,
and then everyone still owes money.
We're definitely in debt at this point.
All right, let's do a quick breakdown. Let's talk about who's your favorite Beatle.
For me, growing up, my favorite Beatle was Paul McCartney because he was the most well-rounded musician of all four of them. He played the drums, he could play the bass, played guitar, he wrote lots of their music, obviously half of it at least. And I really liked his style. As I grew older, that shifted to John Lennon, probably more because I like what he stood for more. And I really respected him as an artist, really like what he did, and also just how he presented himself in the artist world and how he protested quite a bit. Just thought he had a lot more to say.
Yeah, I would say for me, I was the opposite. First, I was probably more familiar with Lennon after the Beatles. But I would say as I got more into him, Paul McCartney, because just of everything that he's done since the Beatles. And obviously, John Lennon not being alive, he couldn't do the same. And I think George Harrison does not get enough credit of his contribution to that band. And I know he didn't do majority of the writing and the aspects of that, which is one of the reasons why he was so unhappy at the end. But yeah, that's how it went down for me.
I think you're right. I think that one of the reasons that Paul McCartney is one of the favorite Beatles, if not the favorite Beatle, was number one, he's still alive. Number two,
still touring.
Yeah, he's still putting out music. And he may not have been the front man that John Lennon was. And that's, I know that's could be argued because obviously, like you watch him on Ed Sullivan's show when they first came, like
they didn't
Paul
necessarily
McCartney
have a front man. Yeah.
It was John, Paul, and George in front, and Ringo just looking like he was happy to be there.
Enjoying the fuck out of life. Yeah. Go Pete Best.
but it was really Paul and John being the front men. Even then, it seemed like Paul was singing most of the songs on the Ed Sullivan show. Not all of them, but I don't know. For me, I think Paul McCartney, same reason. Growing up, he was around. So I knew his stuff and I knew some of his solo stuff and other bands that he was with, Wings and whatnot. But
Wings is a good band in its own right.
It is.
They got some classic hits as well. A lot of them I thought were the Beatles until
Band on the Run. That was Beatles.
I love that song.
Yeah, that's a great song. And I think, again, that's why I think Paul McCartney, because he's alive, I think people knew him and therefore he might be more favorites for our generation, for younger people who weren't there for the Beatles.
You mentioned earlier, Chuck, about George having not gotten the credit for that as well. Yeah. I think there's a distinct sound between the early Beatles and the later Beatles. And I feel like George found his sound around Rubber Soul and Revolver. He was starting to experiment with other religions, some experimental drugs. If you listen, that's where the sound changes as far as the actual sound of their music. It has a lot to do with George, I feel like, in there, because he really started introducing the sitar. He started introducing just different stuff with the guitar and everything else. And it's a different vibe coming out of the Beatles after that point. I mean, it's probably more to do with drugs than George, but I do think that he had a lot of influence in steering up that sound.
When they started to get with the Guru, definitely hear a change. Oh, there was a change in times that had a lot to influence on that too. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think people forget that he was actually the first solo artist to put out an album first before any of the Beatles after they broke up.
Who, George was?
George was, yeah. It wasn't Lennon, it wasn't McCartney, it was him.
Because he left the band. He was the first one to leave the band too.
George.
Yeah. So
interesting. Is Ringo Starr the redheaded stepchild?
So actually going through this whole deeper dive into them and understanding history, I did find it really interesting. When you look back to the very beginning, he was in a band called Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, and they were more established than the Quarrymen, which is where the first three original Beatles come from. They actually opened up for his band, which was more successful in Hamburg, Germany. And I always thought that Ringo was one of the original members. The first drummer was Pete Best. What a change of history for him, man. And he ended up getting kicked out of the band, and then they asked Ringo to play. And I know if you're going to ask, is Ringo Starr a legitimate drummer in rock and roll? I would say absolutely. Now, he had a pretty simple kit, but he was really consistent on keeping a beat, like a shuffle beat or the skiffle beat that they played before they became what they were. He was very consistent at it. And Brett, you even mentioned that he just looked happy to be there, but he just played so effortlessly that he looked like he could read a book while keeping this consistent beat through the whole song. I think that's pretty impressive.
I don't know if you saw, there was a video going around of them recording one of the songs in the studio, and they had been doing 5 takes of the song. At one point, Ringo thought they were going to take a break, so he left and went to the bathroom. They started up the song again and didn't realize Ringo wasn't on his drum set. He snuck back in and started playing, and that's the version on the album or whatever. It was like everyone thought he was just being creative. He was like, "I'm not going to play anything right now." He was like, "Oh, I gotta go."
No, Ringo was taking a shit.
So I think that's an awesome story.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes to what I just said as far as one of his strengths were. He just knew where to keep that beat. He was just consistent. He's a drummer, can jump in the middle of a song and follow through with it. That's pretty impressive, man.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets his due either.
I agree.
Has an interesting timing too. He's not in time. And it's a cool way of playing because it does accent and elevate the music in a good way that is just subtle, that you don't really realize until you start trying to work through it and go, oh, he's off there, which is cool.
Isn't some of that due to him being like a left-handed drummer?
Yeah.
And he had to make up, I don't know if he positioned his sticks different in his hands or something like that, but
I think it was one of these,
that.
like, he's a left-handed drummer playing on a right-handed setup or something like that. And so his timing is just off a little bit, which adds to the mystique.
There's only one song in the Beatles catalog that has Ringo doing a solo. It's on Abbey Road. And it's not even really a solo. It's just
warm up for everybody else
with nothing else on there. Yeah.
Everybody else was taking a dump.
Like what the drum tech does when he tunes the drums before the beginning of the show.
Like every concert where you're like, oh, the band is starting. Oh, no, it's just a tech warming up the drums.
Sounds.
All right, do another deep dive. We talked about all the guys in the band. What's the best Beatles album?
Let It Be. That's my favorite album of theirs. It's subtle. It's cool. It's just got a good vibe to it. It's super mellow. It's also the last album that they released. It wasn't the last they recorded, but the last one released. I just dig that one a lot. So for me, that's my favorite album of theirs.
That was released after they had broken up, wasn't it?
Correct. Yeah. They recorded it, and that's where everything got into a big fight. They put it aside. They came back and did Abbey Road and put that out. I forget the producer's name, but he came back and pulled all the stuff out and said, all right, I'm going to mix this. It's interesting because they later released multiple versions of these things. There's the Let It Be, and then there's the Let It Be Naked album. The Let It Be Naked is all the symphonic stuff stripped out because that's how it was originally recorded. When they went back and when the producer went back and was working it, the original Let It Be album, he put a lot of strings on top of everything else and drowned it out, some of the stuff they recorded. That's also the one they recorded a lot of the songs on the roof of the building that they played their last show on. There's a lot of interesting things about that album for me.
Chuck?
I'm going to say the White Album or Sgt. Pepper's. If you talk to a lot of people, what's the best album? I want to say most people will say the White Album. I could be wrong on that. But it's really hard to say. They have such a huge catalog. That's what I would say for me, though.
Yeah, I think the White Album is a good album, but Sgt. Pepper's, that was the one that I probably listened to the most when I was growing up.
It's got Strawberry Fields on it.
Speaking of Strawberry Fields, what are you thinking about this from Crooked Stave? Chuck, you like it?
It's great. It's a good beer.
Still wish it actually does start to fade more as it gets warmer. I think it's a good beer, but I would definitely drink it cold.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great summer beer. So,
one last thing on the albums. My second would be Revolver. I feel like that's a really cool album of theirs, and it's just a transitional album. You hear a little bit of Sgt. Pepper's in there, but it's still a little bit of Help in there and a bunch of other stuff. It's just a cool mix of stuff. Eleanor Rigby is one of my favorite songs of theirs. I think it's a good album too.
I put it out on Threads a while back when we decided that we were going to do an episode on the Beatles, asking what's the best Beatles song. And of course, people chimed in, Yellow Submarine or Eleanor Rigby or whatever. It was a mix across the board. And then somebody was, that's like asking, who's your favorite kid? Yeah, it's easier when you have one. As a parent with two kids, you don't pick one. And I think it's the same with Beatles songs. The time, the place, the situation, what mood I'm in, all that goes into it. And I think Day in the Life is just a phenomenal song. That might be one of my favorite songs.
All right, give me your top 3 Beatles songs.
For me, it's Two of Us, which is on Let It Be. That's my number 1 favorite Beatles song. Eleanor Rigby is another really good one. I think that one's just amazing. And I really like Help quite a bit too. And I like Strawberry Fields. That's a cool one too.
Okay. I got to say, Hey Jude is by far one of my favorite ones. Let It Be, Come Together.
All 3 of them, Let It Be, man.
I'm throwing Revolution in there too. Is a really good one. It's
so
cool.
So I think for me, Revolution is a phenomenal song. I can't pick just 3. How can you? But I think I Am the Walrus and Revolution, I think those were so experimental, but the guitar was so prevalent on those, which we had not heard before.
That's why I really like that one. It was different for them. A little more upbeat, a little more aggressive attack, and that's why I like it.
And like you said, Chuck, the range, just in 8 years, how they changed their sound from when they started. I don't remember what Love Me Do, I think, was one of their first big hits, right, in the U.S.
Yep.
From that to Revolution, holy crap, they're day and night difference. It's a sign of the times. And I also think it was technology. There were a lot of things that worked in their favor to make them one of the most popular bands ever.
For sure.
I want to touch on that because
Let's do it. This is the intro into your segment. Go ahead.
Are they the greatest band of all time?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure I could answer that with them. But I would say their history is like another reminder of how America and Britain play off each other in regard to music. First, we had the 1950s, like the Bopper, Ritchie Valens. Then, of course, we had Elvis, and those are all influences of the Beatles. I think Elvis created this thing that no one had ever seen before. As far
that
as
hip shake.
The hip shake. But just how crazy the fans were about it. And I think to Britain, the Beatles were their Elvis. With a little bit of marketing by Brian Epstein, who they call the fifth Beatle, he really just put the marketing and the production into making them what they were. And that's really how they got started, becoming the same as Elvis. Here's an interesting thing, going back to that original drummer, Pete Best. He got kicked out of the band when they were recording their first album. I think it was 1962.
63.
They probably recorded in 62.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was before they had even an album. They actually had protests in the street. There were newspaper articles written about it, and it was this big thing in Liverpool about how the Beatles are changing drummers. Ringo got chastised a little bit, but this had already started, at least in Liverpool, of how crazy it was before they had even recorded their first album. So
Right.
I think that certainly attests to something.
I think it says to their musicianship and their writing. Yes, I think you're right, Brett. The sign of the times, better recording technology, TV introduction to Ed Sullivan, all these things that are just new all around that everyone has exposure to. But at the core of it, you still have to have really good songs that people can relate to and people can find some kind of connection to. I think that's where all their stuff originally. You can put any song on the radio right now of theirs and you can start humming it because you know it. And obviously for us, it's a little bit more because it's been ingrained all of our lives. But I think there's a reason for that. The Monkees, who were also a big influence on the Beatles, had some songs, but we only have a couple of those.
We only know those from MTV. It was in Comedy Central. They would play those, the Monkees.
I had
Very
always thought
huge
that
influence on the Beatles.
I always thought that the Monkees came out after the Beatles.
They did. It was a joke. That was a throw to Dumb and Dumber. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So I was watching one of the documentaries and they were talking about when the Beatles, we've all seen that news footage when they're coming off the plane, which of course, sign of the times, we don't exit our planes the same way down the stairs off the door. But anyway,
With a big crowd of your fans waiting at the end.
that happens every time we go on location for AYSM.
That's right.
It was all whoever their promoter was put that all together, and they hired people to come and stand out there and go nuts for them. At least that's what they said in the documentary. It looked like it was this big crowd and people were just losing their shit, and they were all paid. It was all just part of the promotion, and they filmed it.
Interesting. I didn't know that either.
It was one of those, I heard them, I'm like, are you serious? That's brilliant. We're going to do that. We're going to have our own cheering section when AYSM goes on the road. We're going to pay everybody one beer.
There was a dude a few years back who paid a paparazzi to follow him around New York. He was nobody. And he was like, I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to post on my socials. People were coming up to him, getting his autograph, signing, posing with him, taking pictures. Nobody knew who he was.
That's awesome.
Did anybody ask him who he was and what does he do?
I just remember
nobody asks. They just must be important.
That sounds like a Borat kind of thing.
Totally does, right? Yeah, it does.
I think that the Beatles, one of the things that they were good at was just doing things that got people talking or involved with them. Like Paul McCartney not wearing socks in the Abbey Road album cover. People lost their shit over that. It was socks.
I think, though, was that on purpose? I felt like that was just what he was wearing that day. And
he forgot. My understanding was that he lost his socks or something like that. And so he didn't have them. And so I'm just going to go barefoot type of thing. And so they took the picture and everybody lost their shit because he wasn't wearing socks. It's like Paul's dead or John and Yoko in bed. Is that a big deal anymore? I know a lot of people that just stay in bed all day. Like, they were
right, it's Tuesday. Like, what the hell?
Right. I'm not getting up today, but we're not filming it.
People around here. That is a weird. I always thought that was a strange thing. We're going to stay in bed. Okay.
What do you protest?
At the time it was the thing, but looking back, it just feels weird.
It does feel weird. They were protesting it for peace in 1969. Vietnam was gearing up, and so it was like a
make love, not war.
Yeah, but weird.
Yeah, they did get to that one good song out of it.
Which one?
I don't know why I can't
Which
think
one?
of the name of it.
Oh, we are saved.
Yeah, that one.
That one?
With the Smothers Brothers of all people.
Wait, now, but wasn't that just John? Like, he wasn't with the Beatles.
No, he wasn't with the Beatles.
Correct.
That was a solo thing. But
Yeah.
it's still a good song.
Other people didn't do it with him, but he wasn't with the Beatles when he did.
No, I believe George was there, though, playing. And I think Ringo could have been there, too. I could be wrong about that. I didn't research that, but I seem to remember that being the case. The only one who really wasn't there was Paul. Because it was like 69. They were still together, technically. And they were recording it, but it wasn't released.
Did you see that there was somebody who offered them $50 million for them to get back together? I don't know what year it was, like 1975. And no, I don't know about that. But it was $50 million they were offered to get back together and do a show, and they turned it down. Then that was a lot of
Saudi
money.
Prince.
Yeah, don't know.
Who offered him $50 million, I think.
You know what? I don't have that information in front of me, Chuck.
Let's make that up.
Fact check me. Go ahead.
Google says.
Saturday Night Live came on, and he offered $3,000 for John for them to get back together. Lorne Michaels goes on the screen. He's like, I will give you this check for $3,000. Come play here.
That's awesome. And that didn't work. That's weird.
Yeah, they turned it down.
I am intrigued by the stuff. I think, Aaron, you mentioned it about like Paul is dead. Were these all just things that the Beatles or their publicity people put together just to get talking about it back before there was social media?
I had read at one point that it was just people being people and looking for stuff that wasn't there. But then when it came out, hey, it's not hurting us, so let's let it run. They didn't come out to dispel it necessarily. So the whole Paul dead thing, they just let it take its course because why not? It was drawing more sales. Oh, look at the album cover here. When you open it up, this is gone. Everyone's going on to buy the album.
Yeah. I think that was Sgt. Pepper's album cover had a lot of things in it that people were trying to decipher. And I wonder how much of that was planned.
You can still look at that album cover and wonder for hours what the hell is going on with it.
I did this research. I think they have Fatty Arbuckle cut out in there. Nobody knows who that is anymore. You know the name, but tell me what he did. I don't know. He's an actor, comedian. I don't know. So I think it was Fatty, and I don't even know.
He was in
Yeah.
the murder with the Dahlia murders and stuff like that. He had a lot of issues with that, which is interesting. They were all huge for them, obviously. It'd be like us today with Kurt Cobain and Lane Stanley from Alice in Chains and those guys on there. So I did a speech one time in college on Sgt. Pepper's that it is the definitive rock album. If you have one album for Desert Island, that this is the one to bring. If you could say one album, say Sgt. Pepper's, because the cover had a lot of history on it. There's a variety of songs on there. It's stuff for everybody. There's circus music on there. There's rock. There's orchestration stuff. There's kind of Beatles feeling kind of things. It's easy to sing along to. Just got a lot of cultural history on that one too. Yeah, that one is an interesting album for sure.
That's a good choice. Plus, you can look at the album cover forever.
Right.
Yeah. Only does you any good if you bring the record player too.
Right.
I'm just saying. Like, who didn't bring a needle? Damn it.
I believe they had one in Gilligan's Island, though, didn't they?
They did everything but a boat.
Yes. I know.
They had
Refrigerator.
everything they needed, right?
Everything else was completely preserved and in good condition, except for the boat.
Right.
That's all right. So we talked about our personal favorite songs a little bit. Did you guys look up the #1 song for the Beatles as far as streams?
I know that the #1 coverage song is Yesterday. I think Yesterday is like #1 covered in the world. There's so many versions of that. That's the only thing I saw about that.
So Here Comes the Sun is by far like double of any other song. Total streams, it's double. Daily, it's triple any of their other songs. So Here Comes the Sun, which is a good song because you can understand the words and you can sing along. Anybody can sing along to that song, I'm guessing.
I have a theory on that. I got to look it up real quick. Hold on one second.
Dear Google. And then Come Together, Let It Be, Yesterday, and Hey Jude round out the top 5.
Hey, Jude, great song.
Hey Dude.
So regarding Here Comes the Sun, I agree. It's a good song. I don't know that it's my favorite of theirs. And I don't even know that it resonates in their top 20 to me. But it's on the Abbey Road album, which is alphabetically their first album. When they rolled out on Spotify, it could be just like, here it is. Here's our songs and here's the numbers on the song from that album. That's where they started ranking it. When you just say play the Beatles, that's the first song that comes on every single time when you ask Spotify or Alexa to play the Beatles.
It would be interesting to know, and I don't have this information, the #1 commercial song that's been used in advertising and everything. I bet you Here Comes the Sun has got to be top 3 for sure. I am surprised. In My Life is #8 according to Spotify. Blackbird is #7. I think that I like Blackbird. There's no way. I would never guess that was top 10 for Beatles.
In My Life, though, that's in my top 5. I purchased that album. I remember hearing it, and for me, it's a very personal song because it reflects on a lot of people who've passed on. I discovered it about the time my grandfather passed, so it has meaning for me. And I think that's why a lot of people like that song, because it is a very emotional song that makes you think about your loved ones.
Yeah.
I don't have the same connection. When my mom passed or my grandparents passed, there were other songs. When my grandfather passed, and I remember going to his funeral, I don't remember which album, but Billy Joel. When everybody else was in the funeral home paying their respects, I went out to the van and I just listened to Billy Joel for
Uptown Girl.
Oh yeah, your favorite.
Uptown Girl, is that what you said?
every time
I'm in mourning, guys. I'm in mourning.
Every time I hear
Uptown
Girl.
She was an
Grandpa?
Uptown Girl.
Oh shit.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to disrupt that memory, but
Yeah, no, you just ruined Grandpa for me. Thanks. I don't know where I'm going to go with that now, but every Beatles song, I think there's a time, a place, a situation. There's some memory associated to some of the songs, and
yeah.
Day in the Life doesn't have that same connection for me. What a fantastic song. Anyway, did you know that the Hercules beetle can grow up to 7 inches long?
But I did know the rhino beetles can go at least 2 inches long. I had one of those when I was growing up.
God,
Do they bite?
No.
No.
They spit.
No. Yes, we were told them in our hands, but they didn't buy us. They liked us.
To go back to our poop information, dung beetles eat poop. We never talked about that.
We did not.
They roll it.
I'm not sure where to go with that now.
I think that was the original album name for Sgt. Pepper's, and I'm glad they changed it. Dung Beetles Eat Poop. Yeah. Roll up to the Dung Beetles Eat Poop tour. Step right this way.
It's so stupid. Oh, shit. That's good stuff.
So let me ask you guys this. Do they resonate as much with younger people as they did with us? Or all those streams, older generations, or with just a fraction of them younger? I'll have a good litmus test on it. You guys have younger kids than I do. I know my kid doesn't get into them.
I would say no, because they're not exposed to them. The one thing I do notice, though, is the younger generation of musicians. If you're into music, you got to get further into music. They all seem to know who they are, and they'll reference them, and maybe they'll do some remakes of them. But as far as my kids, they probably have heard the Beatles, but they don't know it's the Beatles, and they couldn't necessarily name a song. Like I said, I think it's all about exposure, and I don't think that they're going to the places where they would be able to listen to them.
My brother's kids listen to them, and they know who they are, but my brother listens to them quite a bit.
I was going to say, Chuck, how often are you listening to the Beatles now, in the last month?
I don't know if you listen to the classic rock station, they come on, and that's in my car. So
when your kids are in the car with you, you know it lasts only a few minutes on classic rock before they change it.
Yeah.
Right.
You have a completely different experience, like you were saying about your brother, Aaron.
Well, are the Beatles classic rock?
I think at this point, to us, they're oldies. But let's just say that we go to the oldie station, you're hearing Bon Jovi now.
Just going back to our conversation on what is classic rock, but
right, I think the Beatles are right there. I think the Beatles, some Elvis might be classic rock, borderline, but I think Beatles are where it starts. Your brother, Aaron, he listens to him, so his kids listen to him. I was in a Beatles stage, and both of my kids listen to the Beatles. They know the obscure Beatles. It's not just Here Comes the Sun and Let It Be and Yesterday. They know those, but they know the more obscure ones too. Right on.
That's cool. Yeah. I bet there's probably more appreciation out there than what the three of us with our unscientific poll have just come to a conclusion about. But I definitely think that it's not out there anymore. And even when they are listening to oldie stations, it's more like 70s and 80s classic rock and oldies for us. That's the 60s and 70s stuff. You have to go searching for it, even on the classic rock stations, except for the heavier guitar stuff. Zeppelin, I think, is always going to be a classic rock. Those things are always going to hit there. But the Beatles ones, you're not going to be as prone to hear some of those come together, maybe. Helter Skelter, Revolution, those ones that fit that classic rock feel.
I do think it's song and album specific for classic rock or oldies. I think about the middle of their career is more of the classic rock and that more like doo-wop oldies.
I think Sgt. Pepper's is that line there. But Revolution has some cool stuff, but every single song on there feels oldies-ish to me, whereas Sgt. Pepper going forward feels more classic rock to me.
I would agree with that. Paul McCartney is going to be joining us here in just a little bit to join our conversation. So if
Hey, Paul McCartney.
What was that?
Okay, I have a thing about Paul McCartney, especially older Paul McCartney now. And this is not a diss against him. Obviously, he's awesome and whatever else. But when you hear him talk, it's okay. This guy's a great songwriter. And I hate to say it, but sometimes when you hear him talk, you go, oh, yep, you can tell you didn't graduate high school. It's just like a little bit of mumbling.
I've never thought that about him. But anytime someone speaks with a British accent, I feel like I'm dumb. I just think that they're smarter than me. I don't know what it is about that accent and the Queen's English.
It just
sounds more proper.
So Aaron says that he sounds dumb, and you're saying that you feel dumb when he talks. What's that say? So
we're talking levels.
It's getting deep. The Beatles on album sales are one of the, if not the best-selling band of all times.
Yeah.
Followed by who?
Zeppelin.
It's got to be Zeppelin.
Jimi Hendrix, Rolling Stones.
the Eagles are number 2.
Oh, I should have known
Oh.
that one. Yes, I actually knew
I can
that.
see that.
Yeah.
They got such a great catalog of shit too.
And
I actually knew that, and it surprised me when I heard that. I'm like, really, the Eagles? I'm not saying that they're not a good band or anything. I was just surprised. I didn't think that they were that up there, like with
Yeah.
the
So the Beatles, and I don't know what a unit is for the Beatles. I don't know if that's albums, but 183 million sold.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Billy Joel comes in at almost 85 million.
He's got a lot of work to do. That Billy.
Got some catching up to do. Billy, I hope your recovery is speedy. He fell. They lit the piano on fire, and he was twisting his microphone.
So he started the fire.
No, he fell and was injured. He has postponed several concerts here.
Is he okay?
That sucks.
No, he's not okay. He's recovering. He's alive. Yeah.
Have you guys ever met any of the Beatles?
No.
Have you?
I met Ringo once. He was playing in San Diego, and I went out to see him. It was like it was a weird place. It was like at an outdoor hotel, like by the pool of a hotel. It was very strange. And I got there, and it was just Ringo starts. And there wasn't a big crowd, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to hang out afterwards by this bus and see if I can. I brought my drum even to see if he can sign it for me because I thought that'd be cool.
Did
and
he?
he didn't know, but he rode by and walked by and said hi, and that was
With
it.
his
And
accent.
Peace and love.
with his head like this, and then he walked by. I'm like, okay, so I met him in a way.
You're in his presence.
I was bummed though because I really thought he would do it. There was only a few people standing out there, and I was the only one standing there with a drum and a Sharpie ready to go. Come on, dude! I'm pretty much getting
Was
it
it
here.
was it the right brand of drums? Maybe that's why he didn't do it.
I don't know. Yeah,
Isn't
it probably was the Sears brand that I bought. It was my drum that I had in 7th grade marching band.
Is that from Macy's?
It wasn't very expensive.
Isn't he one of the guys that doesn't sign autographs anymore? Right?
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know. It could be. Maybe that was the problem all along.
Of all the Beatles, there's 2 that don't sign autographs anymore.
You can afford to be stuff. So
He's still touring, believe it or not. He has Ringo's All-Star Band, so he's still out there.
Can you name the number 1 hit for Ringo's All-Star Band?
I could not.
No. I don't think anybody can.
You happen to look through the Billboard year-end performances for 1964 through 1970 and how many hits they had each year on the 100?
No.
So
You did?
at least 3 for 10 years. That's pretty impressive. 64, they had 9 in the top 100.
Yeah.
It's pretty
What was the one got my mind set on you? That's a pop if I ever heard one, man.
Every
That
time
has-
I hear the Weird Al song, the song is just 6 words long. The song is just 6 words long.
I
Couldn't think of lyrics. It's funny when you hear that song, it's like, oh, come on.
I'm assuming that's not a song that you guys had on CD or you guys were playing from your car that summer, but that has got to be one of the worst songs for me. I am not a fan of that song.
It's horrible. I don't like that song, but it pales after Wonderful Christmas Time by Paul McCartney. That's the number 1 worst song by any of the Beatles. It's just horrible. It's so repetitive. And it's, oh, come on. I don't like that one at all.
Okay. We would not be doing it any justice if we didn't address it. Did Yoko break up the Beatles?
No.
I don't think she did either.
She contributed to it, but I think they were already on their way out. I think that's inevitable when you have a band like them where you have such strong songwriters. I don't think that they were going to stay together. I think that they were destined to go their own way.
Yeah, I think they almost had to break up because it was cosmically huge. I don't think it was sustainable. They can't live in a hotel all their life.
Yellow
and not go out.
Submarine.
They can't do this kind of stuff. Yeah, you can't live in a Yellow Submarine. But
That's a
I don't.
Ringo song.
I mean, I also agree that Yoko did not break them up. I think it contributed. I read in an interview with her where she was like, John wanted her to be there. And so he was feeling inspiration through her being there. So I just went there and I'm like, I'm in this room with the Beatles. I'm trying to be as quiet and as small as I can be as to not be seen or felt. But it's hard because she was such a big part of John's life. She was just there. And I think it did help. It did cut some of that tension. It caused some of that tension there. I think it maybe the other guys felt like they couldn't speak bluntly in front of John. So I definitely think it caused problems, but I don't think it was on her. I think if anything, it would be on John. for that.
Well, and I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
that
I could definitely see how having that would throw the whole energy off of making an album.
Paul, his girlfriend or wife, she was there for some of the recordings and nobody thought anything of it. Maybe it was her fault the Beatles broke up.
But wasn't Yoko actually trying to contribute to some of that, and that's where the tension started to begin?
She was also an artist and I think she was trying to, this is just my own theory, she was trying to contribute where she thought she could help. Yeah. And I don't think that they thought that they needed any help from her.
Yeah,
I didn't even know.
The guys didn't.
John Lennon had 2 kids. I know his youngest,
John Lennon.
Yeah, he's got his own band and actually pretty talented. He and his wife, I think, have a band together.
They just put out something with what's his name from Primus too, which is cool. He has some kind of weird side project with them too, which is neat. You remember Julian, and of course he had a little career in the '80s, a couple good songs.
What was his big song?
I remember.
Yeah,
he even sounded like him.
Yeah, his song was pretty big there for a while.
I think he felt too much pressure trying to be. Everybody expect him to be his father, and that's got to be tough on anybody.
And especially if you don't have the songwriting duo like John and Paul. The 2 of them obviously work so well together. If you don't have that with somebody else, you can try all you want. You're not going to be the Beatles.
I think overall for them, it was about the time, having the right people together, and it just all worked out for them.
I seem to remember something last year or maybe a couple years ago where Sean Lennon got together with Harrison's kid as well, and they did something, a little side project too, which was interesting. I don't know if the other Beatle kids were involved with that. I wonder if all the Beatle kids, I'm sure they probably all know each other.
They get together for pizza and
barbecues. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do all know each other, because
I can't imagine they haven't met at some point, or at least have some kind of communication with some thread. There's probably some text chain that they all have. Hey, all right, so here's the Beatles family communication anytime something big is going on with the brand. Maybe.
Could be.
All right, let's give a quick final summary. Your thought on Crooked Stave's Strawberry Fields Blonde Ale?
It still holds up. I love the flavor of it. I like the smell of it. Everything about it. It definitely is a cold beer. I think it needs to be drank out of the fridge, and it's not a sipper. Just drink it, from there, because it's mellowed out, it's even flattened now over the course of our conversation. I wish I had just pulled it right out and chugged it.
Yep, I agree. All right, how many points are you going to give it?
I'd give it a solid 3.
Okay, we'll do 3 1/4.
There you go. Good stuff.
Awesome. Out of Denver. Chuck, any parting thoughts on the Beatles? Anything we didn't discuss?
No, I think we covered everything. No stone unturned here.
Pretty much, we've covered all the Beatles. If you're not listening to anything else, then
every song, I think you need another 2 to 3 hours to cover absolutely everything about them.
Awesome. We just touched the tip of the iceberg here.
But still, such a great band. I don't know. They're huge in my life. And as you mentioned, Brett, like in college, I was big into them too. So, yeah, I dig them quite a bit.
All right. If you liked what you heard today, check us out at AYSM.show. It's our website. You can also check us out on all the social medias. Please rate, review, listen, share.
And love.
Oh, give us a heart. Chuck, what are we talking about next time? Chuck, your mic is off.